I would like to show you one of the most powerful and thought-provoking videos I've seen in a long time.
Plants are an amazing side of learning for us because they experience colonial violence too. When we think about the pillaging or the scramble for Africa
Wait. Can you just say
yeah,
let that?
plants are important for us to learn from because they are also victims of colonial and systemic violence. Plants, in particular for marginalized people, they know us and we know them because we have been pillaged by white supremacy in the same ways. We have been displaced from our lands. We've been planted in environments that are not healthy or safe for us. We have been dehumanized in the same way plants have been. So to deny our relationship with plants is to deny our own history of dehumanization as well. Something Professor Harris talks about in eco-womanism is eco-memory, to be connected to a memory of what the earth has experienced. And something she says is eco-memory is counter-memory.
That was the gardening theologian on TikTok, and I find their videos incredibly thought-provoking. I listened to that and I thought that is what permaculture is. That is what a decolonized understanding of permaculture is. How beautiful and how accurate to understand that colonialism, capitalism, those in power have harmed the trees, have harmed the plants the same way that they have harmed marginalized people. And to understand that it's a shared struggle. It's a shared struggle. An attack on the planet is an attack on us, right? When we care for the planet, we are caring for people. In permaculture, we have these three ethics: earth care, people care, and fair share. And they all work in concert. You can't divide them from each other. One of the biggest I think conceptual frameworks of permaculture is the interconnectedness of all things. People are not set apart from nature. We are part of nature. We are nature. We have a role within the ecosystem, and it can be deleterious. Humans operating from a colonizer framework have had a negative impact on the environment, but we could have a positive one. We could have a healing impact if we understand how it's mutually beneficial. The trees care for us, we care for them, right? The ecosystem is not one we can harm without harming ourselves and harming our children. If we operate from that framework, then we can decide to make incredibly different, radically different choices about our actions, about how we organize society, about how we organize our economies, how we interface with each other in the planet. We can decide to be a force for healing and for good.
But also, if we think just about the real impacts on Black workers, climate change has to come to the forefront. If we think about Flint, Michigan, we need to talk about climate. And we're thinking about Black and brown women in the global South and how climate change impacts Black women farmers, brown women farmers, impacts their ability to get water for their communities. Climate change necessitates, or to care about Black and brown folks necessitates caring about climate. We cannot negate climate without negating ourselves. So I think we have to look at all these layers, as I mentioned, the theological, the ancestral, but also the real impact on Black and brown workers to see why there is so much important for us to focus on climate. I think to save the earth is to save ourselves, and we forget that deep intertwined relationship.
Yes, precisely. We cannot have a conversation about combating climate change or healing the planet, ecological restoration, without understanding that work is inextricably linked to justice work for the people who've been harmed by colonization. It's the same harm that's been done, and it's the same pathways for healing. Now, I've gotten some criticism, or not some criticism, some conversations, questions over the last several days on my Facebook page about whether or not the two founders of permaculture, who were both white Australian men, practiced colonization, co-opting indigenous techniques and perspectives and skills in order to put together permaculture. And I would argue that those men were products of their time. They didn't understand intersectionality, but they understood that the white colonizer capitalist way of doing things was destroying the planet and causing tremendous human suffering, and that if we look to indigenous practice and skills, therein will we find the solutions. But I think there's a whole other layer to that, right? There are an awful lot of white people who practice permaculture. There's an awful lot of decolonization that needs to happen. That's why I'm a big proponent of elevating indigenous voices, marginalized voices, queer voices, women voices in permaculture, because so many of the leaders of the movement have been white men, right? But I think there's more to it than that, right? That, gosh, in permaculture, we say design from patterns to details. You look at the overarching pattern, the holistic picture, you look at kind of the themes, and then you dive deep and you see all of these little ways that it's applicable, all of these different facets that you can take apart and examine in order to have a more nuanced understanding and in order to craft a design that is more effective on all of these different levels. So when I have in the past been extremely critical of certain rights groups, right, whether it be the conservationists, whether it be vegan activists, whether it be folks who, anybody who has their one area that they are hyper-focused on, their one area of activism, we could argue that lacks intersectionality. In permaculture, we would say that you are not having a holistic approach. You're not understanding the interconnectedness of all of these different components. You can't just focus on one thing. You have to understand that nothing happens in a vacuum. Nothing happens in isolation. When you look at saying, like, I'm not going to eat this particular food, I'm going to focus on eating this kind of food, but I'm going to ignore all of the agricultural laborers who are being harmed, who are being exploited, exposed to really noxious chemicals, and paid far below a living wage and working in terrible conditions. How many of those folks are doing forced labor, prison labor? You can't deny all of that and claim that you are working for justice and claim that you are working to create a better world, claiming that you are working for whatever your particular advocacy is. In permaculture, we would say you can't neglect all of these other areas. You can't focus on just earth care without including the people care. You can't focus on human rights, people care, without focusing on earth care. You can't look at the genocide that Israel is committing in the Middle East without also understanding that they are committing ecocide at the same time. Harm to the planet is harm to people. Harm to people is part of harm to the earth, because we are part of the earth. We are part of nature. And so those pathways to healing, when you look at climate change, when you look at all of the different struggles that we are facing, economic, health struggles, environmental struggles, labor struggles, human rights struggles, they are all connected. And I just thought this video was such a beautiful and accurate way to understand how it is that we pursue healing for all of us, that all of these struggles are interconnected. All of these struggles are aligned. And when we craft solutions for one, that can have those ripple effects to ease suffering and enact justice in these other components, in these other facets, in these other areas. I just thought that was so poignant and beautiful and accurate, right? Not only has colonialism, imperialism, corporations, the billionaires, those in power, benefited from exploiting us working class people. Not only have they benefited from white supremacy, from the patriarchy, but also at the same time that they have been harming the planet and they've been harming us, we've kind of failed to understand that we have this tremendous ally in Mother Nature. We have a shared oppressor. We have a shared oppressor, and that means that we are allies together in this fight. It's not just workers around the world who are on our side. It's the trees, it's the ecosystems, it's the entire planet that is on our side. Think about how expansive our set of allies actually is. Think about how much power resides on our side, how immense, tremendous, and multitudinous we are compared to this small group of people who are causing such outsized harm. Gosh, you guys, like, there's so much potential. There's so much capacity and potential for change, to leverage change, to enact change, to create a better world. So what would it look like to reimagine, redefine who our allies are, to include nature, to include the trees, to include ecosystems? What would it change for us? How would our tactics and our strategies shift? What areas, what opportunities are opening up to us when we start to embrace the reality that we have a lot more allies than we previously thought? What would it look like to open ourselves up to that kind of understanding? How would it change the work that we're doing? And how would it help us be more effective? Okay, thanks so much for watching. I'm gonna go inside because it's a gajillion degrees, and also I need to get some pliers in order to finish my new hat band, but I'll be back soon. Thanks.